life was upside down, you turned me around, King of glory. Sing your story. And even when I could not see, you still had a plan for me.
Welcome to Living Rainwater. I'm your host, Matt Coombs, evangelist, co-founder of Living Water Ministries for All Nations. And we're so honored that you take some time to join us today. And we have a special guest, Corey Shankleton, the president of the Heartbeat Coalition. Corey, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and we're going to have 3 segments that we roll out. And this first segment, we're just going to use as an opportunity just for Corey to share a little bit about his story, his walk with the Lord. And we're just going to go right into the Heartbeat Bill and some amazing biblical truths. But Corey, go ahead and share with everybody just a little about your story and your upbringing and how you came to faith in Jesus.
Absolutely, yeah. I was raised in a house, there wasn't really any spiritual influence. My parents divorced when I was 5 and, kind of just sent our whole life into a tailspin. And my mom, often tells me, when I was younger, I just always wanted to, be wherever they were talking about the Lord. But we never did. I mean, we never went to church, never went to Sunday school, never had any of that upbringing at all. And, I can remember even, probably at 6th, 7th grade or whatever, I would go and just walk across the street and sit in the back of a, Baptist church that was there at the time. Looking back now, I understand it was just a drawing, because, the Lord creates us for His pleasure.
Sure.
And, so really, I think at the heart of all of us, we're drawn to that. But you kind of fast forward a few years, and in high school, I had a woodshop teacher, actually, who I would go and sit and eat lunch with every day. And I was getting ready to go off to college, and one day he looked at me and said, I don't know why you're doing that. You're wasting your time. You're called to be a pastor. And of course, at that time, I thought that was insane. There was nothing in my life that would indicate that I wasn't even a believer at the time. And so he didn't say, you need to be a follower of Jesus. He just spoke that, and I thought, this guy's crazy, And so I went on with my life. And actually, after high school, kind of really rebelled ultimately, got into, just a carefree lifestyle.
Sure.
And so fast forward to, I'm 21 years old and I'm standing behind a bar in a 3-story nightclub that I'm a manager at. And a guy walks in off the street and looks at me and says, "What are you doing behind that bar? You're called to be a pastor."
Wow.
And I thought that was, again, the strangest thing. And at the moment, I didn't even think of, the words from my high school woodshop teacher. But over the course of that evening, those words came back. And by morning, I literally, it was like the scales had come off of my eyes. And I realized I'd wrecked my life. I'd lied. I'd broken every relationship. I, was involved in all kinds of things. But I didn't know what you were supposed to do at that point. And I think I shared with you earlier, I was, walking down the street, just crying, literally, crying and saying, okay, God, I missed the opportunity. I was supposed to be a pastor, but I didn't, and I did all of this stuff, and I didn't know what the response was supposed to be. And so I literally was saying, God, okay, kill me. I guess that's what happens now. Wow. Just kill me. And as I was walking past this one church, my feet got super heavy, and so I thought, well, I'm supposed to go in there. And I sat in, slipped in, and it was like a Tuesday night, and the church is packed, and I slipped into the back row of the church, and it was just a hot mess, eyes crying and snotting and all of it, and sat in the back row, and this lady turns around to me and she says, "Sir, we're having a business meeting. You got to leave."
Wow.
And I just sat there for a moment because I thought, no, I know something's happening, and what am I supposed to do with this? And so after a few more minutes, she turned around and repeated, we're having a business meeting, you have to leave. So I got up and left.
And this is at a church?
This is at a church, yeah. And, I've been a Christian long enough now that I realize that if the church is packed for a business meeting, there's some problems, There's something going on they didn't want you there for, but nonetheless. And so I found myself the next night at a church, and there's just this huge church, and again, just wrestling with what was going on. And all of a sudden, I know now it was the Holy Spirit that just began to wash over me, and the Lord just began to, invite me into a relationship with Him. At the same time, the pastor from the pulpit, and there was no way he could see me. This is a mammoth church. He begins to say, there's a young man in this room, and the Lord's, washing over him, and you don't know what to do, and He's inviting you into a relationship with Him, and I always tell the story. I walked out of that room and stepped outside, and the air literally had changed.
Wow!
It had become liquid. The only way I can describe it is like liquid life. Like every time I breathed in, it was like just renewing life, and so I thought this is incredible, and I'd been around people all my life. I mean, I was in a 3-story nightclub every night, and nobody ever said anything about all of this. So I thought, man, people have to know this. And so I figured out real quick that probably my life in the nightclub was done. So I quit my job that day, and literally, I always say this isn't my recommended process, but I was just so hungry to tell everybody about this Jesus that changes your life like that. And literally within 30 days, I bought an old storefront and started the process of just telling people about Jesus. And that was 20 years ago.
Wow. As I hear this, I think back to my own walk. And I didn't grow up in the church. We'd go Easter and Christmas, that sort of thing. But as far as it being a regular part of our life, it just wasn't there. My parents are amazing people, huge hearts. I was adopted, grew up in a foster home, and they fostered many, many kids. And it wasn't until I was in college, and I had my moment where I just broke down, and I remember going to, you talk about being at a bar or what have you. I remember going to bars and thinking to myself, man, all these people have these beer bottles and these smiles and everything else, and here I am holding a beer and have a fake smile on my face, and it's just so empty. And it just took me to the place where one night I just got down on my hands and my knees, and I just said, God, I don't deserve to know you, but if you're there, I need you.
Yeah.
And He just met me where I was at. He pulled me out of that ditch, and He just, He lit a fire in me. And I gave Him my life. And so to hear that, it's so reassuring that God is more than a word or an idea. He's a living God.
Absolutely.
And that He'll meet you where you're at. And so you give your life to the Lord. You have this storefront, and I'm assuming you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, and where does it go then?
Yeah, it was interesting because I'm a firm believer. Scriptures talk about those that are led by the Spirit of God are the sons of God, and that's really been a foundational truth in my life. We are to live our life under the direction and in the tutorage of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so I can remember those early years just being. They were incredible. I remember one time driving down the road and feeling like I was supposed to stop at this house. I lived in what U.S. News and World Reports referred to as the 4th worst white ghetto in America, the Toledo, inner city of Toledo. And thinking I was supposed to stop at this house, and stopped at the house, knocked on the door, and there was a huge family gathering going on. And I said, hey, I just feel like the Lord, invited me to stop here. What's going on? Well, they had just found their grandson shot to death in the bushes that morning. Man. And we were able to gather everybody around and pray over everybody, and release the love of Jesus. And so, really, the first probably 6 years of my journey were marked with stories like that. Going into crack houses and various things, because the Lord will meet you right where you're at.
Yeah. And that's so good. And as I mentioned, we're going to have 3 segments. There's a lot to unpack here. And so we appreciate your time. Please join us as we roll out another segment. We're going to continue on with our conversation with Corey. But be sure to check us out, www.livingwaterfan.org, Living Water Ministries for All Nations. And as we kind of phase out, this is Jeremy Riley and his new song, So Alive. We thank you for spending some time with us, and Lord bless.
My cry inside, then I came alive. King of glory.